Hey guys, so what I want to do is I want to make a quick video about HR 5717. Well, it's not going to be a quick video. This is going to be kind of a long video. So if you've got a little bit of time, this might take about a half an hour to get through. It might take a little bit less, I don't know. But probably no less than 15 minutes. A lot longer if I keep talking about how long it's going to take. But this is about HR 5717. And this is the what I call the wet dream for gun control and gun dense people. These are the ones trying to take your guns. Everything that you can imagine, short of a complete confiscation scheme, is included in HR 5717. The gun control crowd's not even trying to hide it anymore. They're not even trying to chip away at our rights. They're trying to wholesale strip them of us. And 5717 is that. The purpose of 5717, according to Congress, is to end the epidemic of gun violence and build safer communities by strengthening federal firearms laws and supporting gun violence research, intervention, and prevention initiatives. In other words, it's to take away your guns and to fund gun control. That's what this is. There are several sections I want to go through. I've read through the entire 100-page bill. I pulled out the pertinent parts, and I want to make sure you guys are aware of what 5717 actually does say. And the very first thing that it does, it starts right off the bat. The very first thing that 5717 wants to do is essentially says, you know what, Second Amendment? F yourself. Because we are the federal government, we're going to do whatever we want. And the Second Amendment no longer exists because we are going to infringe on your Second Amendment rights by requiring every American to have a license to carry a gun. Not just carry a gun, to purchase a gun. Okay, to own a gun. You have to have a license to own a firearm. Remember, the Second Amendment says keep and bear. Keep, own, possess. Bear, carry, travel with, whatever, bear. Yet, the very first section of this is about firearms licensing and a license to own firearms and ammunition. So, in order to own a firearm, you have to get this license. This is the actual language. It shall be unlawful for any individual who is not licensed under this section to knowingly purchase, acquire, or possess a firearm or ammunition. If you're not licensed, you can't own a bullet. You can't own a gun. Okay? Now, to get a license, you have to be 21 years of age. You got to complete firearm safety training. For those of you in Texas, essentially you have to do everything that the Texas licensing requirements are. You have to do those for the federal. The law does allow for states to state licenses to be recognized as long as they meet these federal requirements. And you have to submit a photograph and pass this background check and can be prohibited by the federal, state, tribal, or local law from possessing a firearm. That's how you get a license, and if you don't have a license, you're screwed, okay? And the Attorney General issues all these, so it's not just going to be the Attorney General. Likely what will happen is that will be delegated to the district attorneys in each of the states and each of the districts throughout the states so that it's a little bit easier because they're required to, once you've met all of the requirements for a federal license, they have 40 days to issue you their decision on whether or not they're going to give that to you. It's a 10-year license, so every 10 years you've got to renew it, but every year the Attorney General has to do another background check on you. So everyone that's got a license, every year they've got to renew your background check, and they're going to do that every single year. Some of the factors that determine unsuitability, I highlighted this section because there's a section here that says other existing factors that suggest that the individual could potentially create a risk to public safety. That's way too ominous and broad for me. I think that easily militia people, open carriers, gun rights advocates, 3%ers, oath keepers, I mean, any existing factor that suggests, that's the word, that suggests that an individual could potentially create a risk to public safety is a reason for a district attorney saying no. So if you've got some Democrat district attorney, then previously possessed firearms. So if you've got guns now and ammo now, you're safe because it doesn't apply to guns that you own right now or guns that you own up to the day this law takes effect. Okay, it only applies to guns after that. Now, how is the government going to know? Very simple. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But the answer to that is that once this law goes into effect, every gun that's manufactured from the day that this law goes into effect and after must be stamped with a date in addition to the serial number. You don't need this federal license if you have a state license from a state that the federal government has said, okay, your requirements mirror that of the federal government. And because Texas is so unconstitutional as it is and already hates the Second Amendment, our licensing requirements would already meet the federal licensing requirements under this law. Now, of course, the licensing requirements would not apply to law enforcement, only as it relates to the guns that they're duty weapons. If they've got their duty weapon at home while they're off duty, they don't need a license for that. But even cops under this law, if they want to buy a personal weapon, anything that's non-law enforcement related, they would also have to have a license in order to purchase that firearm or ammunition as well. The other part of this, the last part that is extremely concerning, is that the Attorney General is going to establish an electronic database. Not only are you going to, I mean, as if you didn't know that, because if you have a license, you're going to have a database of who all is licensed. But this database is going to be accessible to all federal, state, local, tribal law enforcement agencies, as well as FFLs, so they can check your licensing status before they sell you a firearm. So now, here we go. We've got our gun registration right here rolled up into the federal licensing requirements. Also, under the licensing requirement, or under the bill, there is an annual report requirement for states that receive grant money under this bill. And I'll talk a little bit later about what the grant money is for. But if a state receives grant money, the state is required to send the Attorney General every year for each fiscal year a report. And that report, there isn't really a guideline as to what the report is supposed to be at, because it says at such time and place as the Assistant Attorney General may reasonably require, but it does have to contain at least three things. The first is a summary of the activities carried out using that money. So when they get that grant money, the report has to say this is what we spent the grant money on. An assessment of whether the activities are achieving the goals that the money is designed to achieve, and I'll talk about what those goals are later when I get to that section. But the reason I'm bringing this up now, because it is early on in the bill, is the section that says, or such other information as the Assistant Attorney General may require. Well, now all the Attorney General's got to say is, I want to know what kind of cars they drive so that we can find out what are their license plate numbers, how many people are in their family, what's their neighborhood look like, do they go to the range very often? Who knows what it could be? It could be anything. But the fact that a state is now having to report to the federal government on literally anything that the Assistant Attorney General tells them to require should scare just about everybody. All right, the next section is universal background checks. Obviously, what good is a gun control bill without a universal background check provision added in there? So you do have the universal background check as a part of 5717. And you would have to get a background check on pretty much anybody except your spouse, your domestic partner, your parents or children, if it's coming from or to your children, between siblings, brothers and sisters, between aunts and uncles and their nieces and nephews, or between grandparents and grandchildren. So it's very specific about who's exempted. So it doesn't apply, the background check doesn't apply, like I said, spouses, domestic partners, parents, siblings, aunts and uncles, and grandparents. Well, what about great-grandparents? What about my daughter's husband, my son-in-law? I'm not his father. He's not my son. Granted, I could transfer a gun to my daughter, and my daughter could transfer it to her spouse. Obviously, my neighbor Joe, I can't transfer a gun to him. Heck, if we're out there mowing lawns together, and he sees my beautiful Sig Sauer Scorpion 1911 on my hip, and I see his beautiful Glock 17 or Glock 20 or whatever, we can't go and say, I really want one of those. Oh yeah, I really want one of those. Well, what do you say we trade? Yeah, let's trade. Nope, sorry, you can't do that. You need to get a background check. All right, the next part is not only do you need a background check, but when you get this background check, there is a mandatory minimum 7 business day waiting period. So if you buy your gun on a Thursday, you can't pick it up until a week from Tuesday because it's 7 business days. That's Friday, the next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Monday, the following Monday is your 7 days. That's your minimum. So Tuesday is likely the first day you're going to be able to pick that up. But that's not a 7-day waiting period. It's a no less than 7 business days. As you know right now, if you go to do your background check, if they haven't come back with a proceed within 3 days, the FBI has 3 days to do that. If they don't give you a proceed, they're still allowed to sell you the gun. Well, this says no less than 7 days. So literally, if the FBI wants to take 4 months to process your background check, then it's 4 months that you're not going to have your gun, but it can't be any less than so. And if the government, if the FBI completes your background check and as it does now in many cases, if you were to get an immediate proceed, it doesn't matter. Even if you got an immediate proceed, you cannot pick your gun up for at least 7 business days. Section 303 requires a minimum age, so even if you go to buy your guns, you must be 21 years of age. You cannot buy a gun if you're under 21 years of age. The exception here, of course, is they're in the course of your employment for military purposes, law enforcement purposes, or if for ranching and farming related activities. So at the residence, so if you're on your property, it's property that you use for ranching or for farming, you can be under 21. And for so it doesn't apply to the course of employment, in the course of ranching or farming, for target practice purposes, for hunting, or for any course of instruction in the safe and lawful use of a firearm. So those are now you've got to be 21. You have to be 21 to get the license anyway, the federal license, but now you also have to be 21 to buy any firearm whatsoever. Rifle, pistol, doesn't matter. So if you're someone who left, you're self-sufficient, out of high school, you've moved out of your parents' basement, and you've gotten married. You know, my wife and I got married. She was 18. I was 21 when we got married. My wife would not have been able, while I was gone deployed or in training in the military, my wife was not allowed to buy a gun to protect our family because she would have been, under this law, she would have been under the age because she was 18, 19, 20. So until she was 21, and while I was gone away in the military doing my training, my wife would not be able to buy a gun because she would have been, even though she's an adult, even though we had kids, doesn't matter. The law would say, no, you have no right to self-defense until you're 21 years of age. Now, we can send you to go die for your country or to kill for your country. We can send you to do that. You can vote for the people that are going to take away your rights at 18. You're responsible enough to do that, but you're not responsible enough to buy a gun. That's the way it is. There's also a provision here for safe storage. Your guns must be locked up. They must be put away. They can't be made to where a reasonable person would know that a minor is likely to gain access to the firearm without your permission. So let's say they go under your bed or into your closet or whatever. If it's anywhere where it's likely that a child would, or a minor, and a minor is defined as anyone under the age of 18, can gain access to that firearm, it's a $500 civil penalty. $500 civil penalty just for not locking up your guns. So if you're in a house where you've trained your kids from a young age on how to responsibly handle guns, on how to responsibly shoot guns, and not to touch them, doesn't matter. They've got to be locked up or you're violating the law. Now, how are they going to know that? Well, they probably won't know it unless your kid injures himself or someone else because they find the gun and they end up using it and they hurt themselves or others. But, you know, the government's already violating the Constitution by requiring you to do all this stuff. So it's probably not beyond the scope of imagination that they would violate your Fourth Amendment rights and just start coming in and inspecting your home. What I see as a follow-on to this law, would this law come into effect, would be mandatory inspections by the county sheriff or local law enforcement, that if you're a gun owner, because they already know who you are, they've got your name in a list, and they've got your picture, that they can have spot inspections on whether or not your guns are locked up. So I see the Fourth Amendment going out the window, just like the Second Amendment is going out the window underneath this bill. All right, so what good is a gun control bill without the red flag laws? So yes, the red flag laws are incorporated in here. As I said at the very beginning, everything is incorporated in here. It's a written order, a warrant, and it's issued in order to disarm you. It's designed According to the bill, its purpose is to reduce the risk of firearm-related death or injury by essentially prohibiting people from having guns or removing guns from people who might be a danger to themselves or others. Now, the law does say that there's notice and due process requirements. It says that the individual that's named in the application for the due process has to be given notice of that and be able to be heard on the matter of having their guns taken from them and this order in a court. So it sounds good, right? Due process. Isn't that what everybody is upset about with these red flag laws, is there's no due process? Well, this is no different. It says in one hand that there's notice and a due process requirement, and then right after it says that, it talks about the ex parte orders. Now, what an ex parte is an ex parte is where one party goes to a judge without the other party or the opposing party being there to defend themselves. Okay, and the idea or the intent, the original intent for this was that if someone was so dangerous, it was so important that we can't wait to get all the parties together. We've got to do this now, Judge. This guy is such a danger to society or such a danger to himself that we've got to disarm him right now. And so what the ex parte is, they do have some like protections in there that it's got to allege that the respondent poses a danger of causing harm to himself or others with a firearm, that there's reasonable cause to believe that that danger is there with a firearm. But once the ex parte hearing takes away your firearm, this is the old Trump, which Trump and liberal ideology of take the guns first and worry about due process later. So what an ex parte hearing does is the petitioner, which is the person that's trying to disarm you, right, is trying to claim that you're a danger to yourself or others, can go to the judge and present their evidence, whatever that evidence may be. It might be a statement taken out of context. It might be something you wrote that you said in jest, or maybe it was joking. But because your wife wanted to buy a new car and you said no and you bought her a bicycle instead, and she's pissed off and she's getting ready to divorce you anyway, so I'm going to do an extreme risk protection order on you, then all they've got to do is prove by a preponderance of the evidence. It's a very low, basically 50.1% likely that you are a danger in order for them to do this. And then, of course, you'll have your hearing later. And some of the factors that they can use in determining to do this ex parte hearing is a section that I thought we all need to worry about. And it says, one of the factors includes, quote, the reckless use, display, or brandishing of a firearm by the respondent, unquote. What does that mean? The reckless use, display, or brandishing. How many times have you heard that carrying a rifle in Home Depot or into Starbucks or whatever is reckless, or even brandishing? So while it's supposed to be, reckless under the law is there's actually an objective standard to recklessness. There's an objective legal standard. The problem is it's very hard to define. It's one of those things you'll know it when you see it kind of things. But reckless do you really think it's going to be hard to find a judge that thinks it's reckless for you to walk around with an AR-15 while you're shopping or just walking down the road, doing a walk or a hike or something like that? Probably not. But the fact that it says reckless use, display, or brandishing, and what's a display? If I have it up on a shelf or something? The law doesn't define these things. So that's what makes this red flag thing, because anybody can be a petitioner for a red flag against you. Anybody under this law. Now, don't worry if they falsely report you or frivolously report you, and you've got to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars to get an attorney to fight back against this, and come to find out after spending all of this money to clear your name that the person made a frivolous petition or even a fraudulent petition. Don't worry, the law takes care of that. They're going to fine them $1,000. Okay, don't worry. There is a fine of not less than $1,000 if you file a false report or a frivolous report for an extreme risk protection order. Yay. All right, the next section is the big section, of course. This is the assault weapons and firearms silence silencers and mufflers banned. Yes, mufflers. So the first thing is, how does it define an assault weapon? Okay, an assault weapon is not just a rifle, and it's not just a certain kind of rifle. Assault weapons are pretty much everything you own, and I'm going to prove it here in just a minute. But so let's take my rifle here, my trusty Legion Arms rifle made in Temple, Texas, my hometown. And we're going to go through this, and we're going to determine whether or not this is an assault weapon under 5717. Now we all know it's going to be an assault weapon, right? Because it's scary looking. It's only half scary looking. It's silver. Only the top part of it is the scary black that everyone's afraid of. So that's we all know it's going to be categorized. But legally, what makes this an assault weapon under 5717? Well, first of all, it's got to be a semi-automatic rifle. This is a semi-automatic rifle. And it's got to have a detachable magazine. I do have a detachable magazine. And this does take a detachable magazine. There it is. I just detached it. Okay, so it meets the first two elements. It's a semi-automatic, I guess three elements. It's a rifle, it's a semi-automatic, and it accepts a detachable magazine. But it must also have, so it meets that, but it's got to meet that plus any one of the following characteristics, which is where things get really silly. So the first one that it mentions is a pistol grip. It is now officially, just by reading the first subcategory, I have a pistol grip right here. So this is already, just because it's a semi-automatic rifle with a detachable magazine and a pistol grip, it is now considered an assault rifle. Now what's funny is, what is a pistol grip? Well, the law does define a pistol grip. And the term pistol grip means a grip, a thumb hole stock or Thordston style grip or stock. That's the little thumb hole, you know what I'm talking about. Y'all are smart people. Or any other characteristic that can function as a grip. So that's the first one. I've already met it. This is already, without even having to go forward and determine what else could possibly make this an assault weapon under the law, we've already determined that. Why? Because it's got a pistol grip. That automatically makes it. But let's just assume it doesn't. And let's continue with our analysis of whether or not this is an assault rifle. The next thing is, does it have a forward grip? This one, now I do have some guns that do have forward grips. This one doesn't have a forward grip. I've got a standard barrel shroud here. That is your old school type barrel shroud. So I don't have a forward grip on that. That would be anything that you could use to grip onto and hold. It's forward of the magazine, and I don't have that on here. So if I didn't have a pistol grip, so far I would be safe because I don't have a forward grip. Now, the next thing that would define this as an assault weapon is a folding, telescoping, or detachable stock. If it in any way reduces or lengthens the length or size or dimension of the concealability of the weapon, this does have an extendable, folding, telescoping. It's not folding, it's extendable or telescoping stock. So now, I've now got two additional characteristics. I've got the pistol grip and I've got the extendable stock. Now, that's stupid because, some people like to be up close. Like I'm a guy that likes to be right up on my scope when I'm shooting. I like to be right up on it. Some people, they want to go further back, right? And that's what's good about this, is that these types of stocks, unlike the old M16 or the old AR-15 style stocks that were just one size fits all, this is good because depending on how tall or short or what you prefer to shoot, you can change the length of, and if you were having someone else shoot, you could have it change. So why that matters, that it's, why this makes it an assault weapon, it boggles my mind what this does. It doesn't improve anything. It's a comfort thing, but hey, liberals, right? All right, the next thing, let's just say I don't have a pistol grip. I don't have an extendable stock. I've already said I don't have a forward grip. The next thing would be a grenade launcher. I don't have a grenade launcher on here, so it's not an assault weapon because I do not have a grenade launcher. I would love to have a grenade launcher. I wish I had a grenade launcher, but I don't. But that, if you do have a grenade launcher on your rifle, that happens to be semi-automatic and have a detachable magazine, that grenade launcher would make it an assault weapon under this law. All right, so I don't have that. What's next? The barrel shroud. This is the barrel shroud right here. This is the barrel shroud. Now, the law basically makes it defines the barrel shroud as it's a shroud that is attached to or partially or completely encircles the barrel of the firearm so that the shroud, this plastic piece here, protects the user of the firearm from heat generated from the barrel. In other words, if you have something that keeps you safe while you're operating your firearm, that keeps you from burning yourself, if you have that, all it's got to do is partially or completely encircle the barrel, just partially. So if I just took off half of this, because this is two pieces actually, this part comes off this way, this part comes off that way, but even if I took off half this, it would still be an assault weapon under this definition because it would still partially encircle the barrel to keep me from burning myself. So what the government wants you to do is it wants you to burn yourself when you're operating your rifle. So just the fact that it's got a barrel shroud, I've now got several characteristics that make this an assault weapon. All right, the next thing after the barrel shroud, a threaded barrel. Darn it, there's another characteristic. This is actually a super assault weapon because I now have 4 characteristics. I have the pistol grip, the telescoping stock, the barrel shroud, and the threaded barrel on which I can interchange or take off this flash suppressor. I can put a different flash suppressor on it. I've got different rifles that have different flash suppressors on them for different purposes. But because it's got a threaded barrel, just because you're able to put this little piece on there to disperse the flash, that makes it an assault weapon. And then now, even if you don't have if you have a semi-automatic rifle that doesn't have a detachable barrel or a detachable magazine, let's say that you've got a magazine that doesn't come out, all right? And generally, when you have a magazine that is fixed, this is where you use clips to load the rounds. Okay, you'll have a clip, you'll insert it in, you'll push the rounds into the magazine that is fixed to the firearm, and then you pull the clip out. Sometimes, like the M1 Garand, you actually put the entire clip in there, and that's how it functions. And then when you shoot the last round, the clip ejects. That's what the difference between a clip and a magazine. But if you have a semi-automatic rifle that has a fixed magazine, but it has a capacity to hold more than 10 rounds, that is an assault weapon. Just because it's got a fixed magazine and it holds more than 10 rounds. And we'll get into that later because, yes, you know what's coming up later. Now, that's the rifle, right? That's the rifle. That's what makes a rifle an assault weapon, but they don't stop there. An assault weapon is also your pistol. So, what makes a pistol an assault weapon under the law? Well, first of all, it's got to be a semi-automatic. This is a semi-automatic pistol. This is a pistol. And it must have a capacity to accept a detachable magazine. It takes a detachable magazine. So, we've already met the first, but it must also have any one of the following characteristics. A threaded barrel. Nope. This one does not have a threaded barrel. I do have a pistol that does have a threaded barrel, which would make that semi-automatic pistol an assault weapon. This one does not, so it does not so far meet it. There is no threaded barrel. A second pistol grip. If I had another pistol grip up here, maybe, if I put something on the Picatinny rail here, so I could shoot my pistol this way. Now, that would be this pistol. What they're trying to do with this is they're trying to incorporate the AR pistols into making an AR pistol, because some pistols have the forward grip on them, right? So if you've got any pistol, maybe even an Uzi, perhaps, might have a forward grip on it, or some other pistol that's got a forward grip. So this one doesn't have it. A barrel shroud, this does not have a barrel shroud on it. It's just got the regular slide. So again, they're trying to incorporate the AR pistols under the assault weapons definition. This normal pistol does not have a barrel shroud on it. It has the capacity to accept, if it takes a detachable magazine outside of the pistol grip. So if you've got, again, an AR pistol, the magazine is in the same place in front of the pistol grip. But if you've got a pistol that takes a magazine anywhere other than the pistol grip, that is considered an assault weapon. If this were a semi-automatic version of an automatic firearm, it would be an assault weapon. If it has a manufactured weight of 50 ounces or more when unloaded. Now, this is, if you've got a Sig Sauer Scorpion, or if you've got most 1911s, you know these things are heavy anyway. I don't know what 50 ounces weighs like, and I don't recall what this weighs. I would think that it's more than 50 ounces. I don't know how many ounces are in a pound, sorry. That's why I'm going to law school, I'm not good at math. But this is pretty heavy. It might, again, I don't know what 50 ounces is like. I think of a 24-ounce soda. This might, maybe it's not 50 ounces, because it definitely doesn't weigh more than 2 of my 24-ounce sodas. So, and that's 48 ounces. So we still got 2 more ounces to go. So, okay, maybe this doesn't meet that requirement of 50 ounces or more. But if you have a pistol that weighs more than 50 ounces, the Desert Eagle, who knows? I don't know how much those weigh either. If your pistol has a stabilizing brace, or a similar component to that, like that would make it an assault weapon as a pistol. If it's a pistol with a fixed magazine and it can hold more than 10 rounds, that makes it an assault weapon, so that's not this one. So thankfully, I don't believe, unless this weighs more than 50 ounces, and one of these days I'll go and measure it, but I really don't think this weighs more than 50 ounces. I don't even think it weighs more than 50 ounces loaded. So my pistol is safe. Yours might not be. So we've talked about rifles. We talked about pistols. Okay, so I fixed the sound issue here. I just realized there was a sound issue that my microphone wasn't plugged in. But let's cover semi-automatic shotguns as well. Again, it's got to be a semi-automatic. It's got to be a shotgun, and it's got to have one of the following. Okay, it's got to have a folding, telescoping, or detachable stock. Which I have a shotgun that's got a folding. It's actually a detachable and telescoping stock, just like my AR here is. So if it's got if it's got a telescoping stock or a folding stock, and it's a semi-automatic shotgun, not a double barrel shotgun, not a single barrel shotgun, not a pump action shotgun, but a semi-automatic with a telescoping or detachable stock, it's now an assault shotgun. If it's got a pistol grip, it's now an assault shotgun. If it's got a fixed magazine that allows you to have more than 5 shells, it's an assault shotgun. If it's got the ability to accept a detachable magazine, like a Sega shotgun, that makes it an assault shotgun. If it's got a forward grip on it, it is now an assault shotgun. So it doesn't have to just be a rifle. It doesn't have to just be a pistol. It can also be a shotgun. Oh, and by the way, no grenade launchers on your shotguns either. If you have a semi-automatic shotgun with a grenade launcher on it, it becomes an assault weapon. And also if you have a shotgun with a revolving cylinder, that becomes an assault shotgun as well. Now, let's say that let's even say you have an AR. It doesn't have the threaded barrel. It doesn't have the barrel shroud. It doesn't have the pistol grip. It doesn't have the telescoping stock. It doesn't have the detachable magazine. Okay, great. You've got an AR that doesn't have any of those accessories. You're good, right? No, you're not. At the end of the section, they do the all-inclusive. It includes all of the following rifles, copies, variants, altered facsimiles with the capacity of any of those such weapons. All AK type rifles, and then it lists a whole bunch of AK style rifles. And then all AR style rifles, and then it lists, I mean, there's like 7 or 8 pages of nothing but rifle manufacturer after rifle manufacturer that they consider ARs. But it says including the following. So if it's an AR style or it's an AK style, just know that you've got an assault weapon under this law. Now it also goes into the large capacity ammunition feeding devices. So what we consider a standard capacity magazine is now a large capacity magazine if it can hold more than 10 rounds. Okay, it doesn't matter that you only put 10 rounds in here. If it's capable of holding 11 or more rounds, it is now considered a large capacity magazine, and it's restricted. Okay, so you can't have anything over 10 rounds. It's illegal to possess these things. There's no grandfather clause in the law as it relates to these. So your standard capacity magazines are gone. If you've got a Glock or an XD that holds more than 10 rounds, you're screwed as well. You can't have those. And not only that, but any production of these magazines in the future, any magazine that can hold more than 10 rounds in the future is required by law under this 5717 to be both stamped with the date that it was manufactured as well as a serial number. So now not only will your firearms have serial numbers, but so will your magazines. Now, what I don't get is where are they going to put the serial number? Because you know there are many parts of a magazine. You've got the casing itself. You've got the butt plate, the bottom there. You've got the spring, the plate inside, the spring, and then the follower. What part of the magazine is supposed to have the serial number on it and the date? There are different parts to a magazine, just like there are different parts to a rifle. But because our government and the liberals who are pushing this nonsense have no idea how anything works related to firearms, much less how magazines work, who knows what they're going to do with that. Now, I talked about gun buyback programs, and there's the burn grants that are incorporated into this law, because obviously we can't have you with assault weapons after this law passes, and we can't have you with magazines after this law passes that are too efficient. So they've got to get them back from you, but because of the takings clause in the Constitution, they're going to have to pay you. So this legislation under Section 514 allows for the use of burn grants for buyback programs for your rifles and for your large capacity magazines. Now, I know you're all saying, I can hear every single one of you out there saying, how can they buy back what they never sold in the first place? I gotcha. Look, that's just what they call these things. But they are going to be spending our money to steal your weapons from you. And you're definitely not going to get what they're worth. I'll tell you right now, these Legion Arms, that Legion Arms is no longer in business, okay? This is a very hard to find rifle right here. I guarantee you, whatever the government offers is not going to be worth what this rifle is worth, especially after all the other parts I put into it. Because I like this rifle. It's one of my favorites. It's my self-defense rifle. The next section is ghost guns. You've got to address that, right? I mean, ghost guns are scary sounding, and we can't have people with ghost guns. So the legislation makes it illegal for anyone to manufacture, sell, offer to sell, transfer, purchase, or even receive a ghost gun. What is a ghost gun? A ghost gun is a gun that doesn't have a serial number. Why? Because maybe you had an 80% lower, and from that 80% lower, you created the lower of your AR or your pistol slide or whatever, and so therefore, obviously, you don't put serial numbers on your own guns. That's what they call a ghost gun. Now, after this goes into effect, you have 90 days, essentially, to get a serial number onto your any firearm that you have that does not have a serial number on it. You've got to go to like an FFL or somebody. I don't know how you're supposed to do this, but you're just not allowed to have a gun that doesn't have a serial number on it. Darn it. You just can't. The other thing is there's a prohibition, Section 516 has a prohibition on firearms accessories. This also affects me. I'm going to be all kinds of criminal, left, right, and sideways when this law passes. If you have, or you sell, or you import, or you make, or you transfer, or you buy, or you possess any device, so it's a trigger crank. A trigger crank, I've actually got one of these. I haven't been able to use it because it doesn't work. It wasn't milled out correctly, and I just haven't gotten around to fixing it. But a drill crank is a little device that you stick on in the trigger well here, and it's got a little handle that you can turn, and as you turn it, there's a wheel inside here that hits your trigger, and there are several hits in the trigger. So as you turn it, it's actually depressing the trigger for you, and the faster you turn it, the faster it shoots, right? That's a trigger crank. If you've never seen one, I've got one. It's pretty neat. I want to shoot it. I've been so busy since I bought it or bought the parts for it and made it that I haven't been able to fix. There's a small milling error on lining up two of the plates that go on each side of the trigger guard. But anyway, the fact of the matter is it's illegal after this. Same thing with a bump fire stock. The bump stocks are now, Trump's bump stock ban will be codified into law under 5717. And as well as anything. So this says any accessory that is designed or functioned to materially accelerate the rate of fire of a semi-automatic rifle. So rubber bands are now illegal. Your belt loops are now illegal. If you put in some drop triggers, if you've got a drop trigger for an AR, of course you're not going to have an AR anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter because that'll be illegal. But any drop trigger anything that accelerates your rate of fire becomes illegal under 5717. What also becomes illegal is that expensive suppressor that you bought, that you spent $200 in a tax stamp on, another few $100s on the suppressor itself, probably 8 to 12 months waiting for the suppressor to come in, or your approval from the ATF, all the time and effort. Well, all that's for naught, because under this law, there is no right to there is no legal possession of a silencer or a suppressor or a muffler. Okay, I don't know what a muffler is, but I guess if you take your car and start shooting with it, I don't know. But you can't have a muffler either. So it is going to be illegal to possess those as well. Okay, so the NFA is no longer in effect. This goes further down the line, and they can be seized and forfeited. All right, you can't have them. Even though you went through all the trouble of getting the tax stamp, you went through all the extra background checks, you got the law enforcement officer to sign off on it. Well, too bad, suppressors are illegal. Oh wait, unless you're government. Government has an exception to that. Under this new law, if you are an FFL, within a year of this law going into effect, you have to submit to the Attorney General is going to have regulations that ensures that if you are a premises that is a licensed dealer to deal in firearms, to ensure that those firearms are safe from theft, right? Apparently the government thinks that it's possible that people aren't going to find a way to steal something that they really want to steal. So what it's going to do is it's going to mandate that FFLs submit or are in compliance with a security plan that is developed from somebody. But it's going to be, well, the FFL has to submit a security plan, and it's got to be in compliance with the law. And again, I'm not going to go into the details of that because I'm not an FFL. Most of you are not FFLs. If you are an FFL, I definitely think you should go in and read section 701 of HR 5717. It's section 701. But it mandates also the use of locked metal cabinets and fireproof safes, security systems, video monitoring, anti-theft alarms, security gates, strong locks, site hardening, and concrete ballers or other access controls if necessary, okay? They're going to want you to put those little concrete things around the front of your store so that nobody can drive a car through the glass-plated window or through the wall or whatever. They're going to want concrete pillars essentially around your gun shop. And, of course, this is all going to be at your expense, right? But, you know, I've been into a lot of gun stores, and they've got a lot of, you know, they've got metal bars, reinforced walls, doors with all kinds of metal locks that I mean, you've pretty much got to drive a car through it to get into these buildings. But, you know, they keep their firearms up on the wall, and they're locked in with individual locking cages or whatever. But under this law, they would be required to be in use of a locked metal cabinet or fireproof safe. I don't know if that means while they're on display, only when they're not on display, maybe only when you're not there. But that's in there, and it's quite oppressive, if you ask me, because especially if you're a big gun store and you've got a lot of guns, that's a lot of metal safes you're going to have to buy. Okay, that's a lot. And I know a lot of gun stores have safes. Sometimes they have a big safe room that maybe where they keep a lot of the stuff that isn't easily locked up. They'll keep it in there, or that's where they keep the extras, not the display models. But this sounds like they're going to even have to put their display models away. And there's a lost and stolen reporting requirement as well. If you lose or if you realize that your gun has been lost or stolen within 2 days, 48 hours, you have to report that. Okay, it's a crime not to report the loss or stealing of your firearm. Now, what's weird about this and what's hard about this is, you know, if you're somebody that you shoot a lot, you've got a lot of guns, maybe you accessorize and you carry your guns based on what you're wearing. So depending on what you're wearing, you might wear a different gun. And so in the course of a week, you might wear 3 or 4 different guns. If you go to the range, you might go and shoot different kinds of guns, and maybe you keep them in different places based on whether or not they're clean and need to be cleaned, or whether they're used for a certain purpose, or maybe you just go through them on a rotating basis. I don't know. Everybody's got their little quirk about guns. But let's say you go to look for a gun that you want to shoot, and it's not where you normally put it. You could have very easily put it in one of your 10 other safes. But you've also got probably 100 guns in each safe. Who knows? It depends on what size safe you have. My uncle's got a safe that he can put 100 guns in. So if you've got one of those kinds of safes, and you realize, crap, I can't find my gun, but I know it's got to be here somewhere, right? It's got to be here somewhere. I'm just going to keep looking for it. Well, if you keep looking for it and it takes you a couple days, and on the third day you finally decide, you know what, dang it, I must have lost it. Maybe it was stolen. I don't know where it's at. If you didn't report that within the first 2 days, you're screwed. If it's lost, if you know it's lost, even if it's lost within your own house, if you know that it's lost and you don't report it within 2 days, even though you know it's in your house, and you might find it in 3 or 4 days, if you don't report it within 2 days, it's a crime. Okay? I think that's a big problem. I don't like that. I don't think that, obviously it's the responsible thing to do. If you truly believe a gun is lost or stolen, and I don't mean lost like you misplaced it in your house somewhere, or you put it in a different safe than you normally put it in, and you just don't have time to go find it. I mean, if you actually think you might have left it in a bathroom or at a gun range or something like that, it's legitimately lost, obviously the responsible thing to do is report it. I don't like these mandatory reporting requirements because it doesn't take into effect everything else going on in your life. You might realize that your gun's lost, but you don't have time to look for it right now. You know it's somewhere in your house, or it should be, but you're going on a trip and you're not going to be back for 3 or 4 days. Well, the minute you realize it's lost, that starts the clock. Now, how's the government going to prove that? I don't know, but that's one of the things that's required. Going back to the FFL stuff, right? So currently, an FFL is required to keep the 4473s. That's the form that you fill out when you go to buy a gun. It does the background check, and it includes your name, your gender, your residence, your occupation. It's got a complete description of the firearm, the make, the serial number, the type, and the type of transfer that's being made. Well, an FFL has to keep that for 20 years on record. They don't have to send it to anybody. They just have to keep it on record for 20 years. Well, under this law, they have to keep it indefinitely. And within 5 days of selling a gun, they have to take that 4473 and report it to the ATF. They have to send that paper to the ATF. So now, as if the licensing requirement earlier that isn't a good enough indicator of, obviously the licensing requirement is an indicator of who has the guns. Well, now the government's going to know what guns you have, because every time you buy a gun from an FFL, they are required to send that 4473 to the ATF, and they keep it on. So now we've got all kinds of databases, left, right, and sideways. Okay, that's a big problem there. The another thing that the law does is currently gun manufacturers are specifically excluded from consumer product safety laws. And the reason for that is it's no secret that a gun is a dangerous weapon, right? It can be a dangerous weapon. It is a dangerous weapon. The purpose of a gun is to destroy or kill something, right? Whether it's to destroy a paper target, a steel target, any target. Its purpose is to destroy or kill. Obviously for legal purposes, self-defense, target practice, sporting, hunting, whatever, for legal purposes. But as the law stands right now, and it's a very good law, if Joe Blow takes his gun and murders you with it, your family cannot sue the gun manufacturer because Joe Blow used that gun negligently, irresponsibly, or criminally. Well, under this law, that takes out those exemptions. And now if some hippie chick, leftist who hasn't showered in days and has hairy armpits decides, her husband decides, and somehow miraculously she got married probably to another hippie, that he's going to blow his brains out because he realizes he's married to a smelly, hairy beast of a woman who is just not worthy of living with, or vice versa. Maybe the woman is tired of living with a smelly, hairy, hippie guy that never showers or shaves or brushes his teeth. And so she decides to blow her brains out and commit suicide. Well, now the other party, the spouse or the girlfriend or whatever, can now sue the gun manufacturer because this person decided to commit suicide because the gun is dangerous. That repeals all that. What that's going to mean is the price of your guns is going to go up because now the gun manufacturers are going to have to be litigating this. They're going to have to be settling. They're going to have to be fighting in court because every time someone is killed with a gun, they're going to not only sue the person involved, but they're going to sue the gun manufacturer because they sold a product that is not safe in society. Of course, those aren't the only cost increases that are going to be added to the cost of being a gun owner because the bill has made sure that it is nearly impossible for you to own a gun. It is trying to price you out of being able to own a firearm. What this bill does under Section 4181, this is near the end of the bill, so if you didn't read the entire thing, you only read the parts that most people care about, which is the assault weapons ban, maybe the background check. Way down in the bill, kind of buried in there and sort of mentioned as an aside, like really quickly, it's a very short section, there is now a tax on the sale by a manufacturer, producer, or importer of any firearm, any pistol, any revolver of 30%. So think of any gun that you've bought or you're going to buy, that gun will now be 30% more expensive and that money going to the government to fund gun control efforts. Now it says gun safety research and all that. It's going towards gun confiscation and gun control. That's what it's going to. So your guns are now going to be 30% more expensive because this bill includes a tax of 30% on every firearm. But it doesn't stop there. It's also a 30% tax on lowers. So if you buy like a strip lower and you're going to build it all together, that lower is going to be 30% more. If it doesn't matter whether it's a pistol, rifle, or whatever, if it's designed to accommodate an upper receiver or a slide or whatever, it's going to be 30% more. It's going to cost you that much. And so now that you've paid 30% more for your guns, well, at least we can worry about cheap ammo, right? Nope, wrong. The bill also has a 50% tax, 50, half of 100, a 50% tax on ammunition as well. So the bill's got a 30% tax on guns and a 50% tax on ammunition. Now, fewer people can afford to defend themselves. The poor and homeless that liberals care so much about can now not defend themselves. They can't afford to go hunting anymore because the price of ammo to go hunting is through the roof now. Think about that. A $10 box of ammo is going to cost $15 at least. That's just in federal taxes and then whatever the state taxes are. So you might be paying 20 bucks for a box of $10 ammo. It's absolutely insane. That is H.R. 5717. I know this took a long time, but it's a big bill, and I wanted you to understand exactly what it said. It's got to be opposed. Go to congress.gov, type in H.R. 5717, and then sign up for an account to be able to follow that bill. So if ever there's a bill author added, you'll know about it, and if that bill author is your representative, you need to make sure you call that representative and let them know that you absolutely disapprove of this. It'll let you know if there's a hearing on the bill scheduled. It'll let you know if there's a vote on the bill, and it'll let you know if it moves through the legislative process. Again, it's not something I think is a big deal right now. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. It's just going to sit there. But the fact that it is sitting out there and it is as nefarious as it is, we should all be aware of and we should be paying attention to and making sure that it does not come to life. And that means that you have to vote. Even if you are an anarchist and you don't believe in government, damn it, get off your ass, okay? Vote for the lesser of the evils, all right? Whatever that is. I don't care who you think that is. But one of those people who is running for office, whether 10 people vote or 10 million people vote, one of those people is going to be in Congress and is going to be the president. So you might as well at least try to have a say in who is the least worst of them all. Yes, it sucks to vote for the least worst. And I don't care if it's some third party that doesn't have a chance to win It doesn't matter. Go out there and vote for the person that you think is most going to protect your liberty. No one in government is there to protect your liberty. They're all trying to find ways to undermine it. But there are some that will at least protect most of your liberty. And if you can find someone that will protect most of your liberty instead of not voting and ensuring that someone that only protects a little bit of your liberty gets elected, you're part of the problem. So just taking yourself out of the electoral process doesn't solve any problems, but it does give you a reason to whine and moan and complain on social media and you know, oh, voting's stupid. Well, you're stupid for not voting, okay? It doesn't matter that your vote matters or doesn't matter. The point is that you've got to try and get the least, use the process while the process is here and get the best possible option that we can get. With that, thank you all for tuning in. I know this was a long video. Take care, be safe, be free.